Three high-profile police killings of black men in the past 2 years have led to ongoing conversations about racial justice in Minnesota. There's also been noticeable solidarity between the state's African American and African immigrant populations. Special correspondent Fred DeSam Lazaro reports.
Assalamu alaikum.
Korsha Hassan's second-grade classroom at Echo Park Elementary is a diverse tapestry. Students whose families are Native American, Nigerian, Mexican, Pakistani. The school, located in the Twin Cities suburb of Burnsville, is less than 40% white.
Jackson, how would you describe the word culture?
Today's lesson is about honoring that diversity.
Am I American too? Yeah, I'm American too.
It's the kind of exercise that was rare for much of Hassan's own upbringing as the daughter of Somali immigrants going to school in suburban Columbus, Ohio.
The students didn't look like me, my teachers didn't look like me. I was hyper visible. And so what I wanted from my teachers were for them to be affirming and caring and loving, and I hardly found that in my school experience. If you hear something that is racist or that doesn't make sense, you can interrupt it. You can say, hey, stop, that's not okay, right?
Hassan learned to embrace her dual identity as both Somali and black, something she's trying to instill in her students with similar backgrounds. Historically, she notes, there's been tension between African immigrants and African Americans.
We've really created this network, per se, of knowing who we are, respecting our differences, but also really understanding that we are powerful together.
Minnesota remains predominantly white, but its non-white population has grown over the past 3 decades. It's about 24% today. Blacks have been a large part of that growth, including substantial immigration and refugee resettlement from across the African continent. And they've become far more engaged in politics and civic activism. In 2020, Esther Agbaje became the first Nigerian American elected to the Minnesota House of Representatives. A Harvard Law School graduate, her work in the legislature has largely centered on issues of racial and social justice, particularly housing.
This is a state that has worked on that ethos of what works best for white middle-class people, rather than thinking about what about everyone else we're leaving behind if that's the only subset we're thinking about.
Agbaje's parents moved to Minnesota from Nigeria and experienced America not only as foreigners, but also as people of color.
I grew up with the sense of knowing that, you know, there's different races across America, and yes, as a black person, you tend to have to prove yourself a little bit more, and then even as a foreigner, you have to even work even harder to be able to be in these spaces.
Agbaje says her parents, like many other African immigrants, heard negative stereotypes about black Americans. Journalist and PhD student Ibrahim Hirsi, a Somali immigrant himself, says those depictions were reinforced by a key American export, Hollywood movies.
Sometimes they don't want to work, they're lazy people. Sometimes majority of them are criminals or drug dealers. They live in neighborhoods that are very dangerous, and you should not be going around them.
But the negative stereotyping went both ways.
I grew up watching Tarzan, and Tarzan showed me a white guy going through the jungle of Africa with Africans who didn't look like they were very sophisticated.
James Burrows has worked on diversity and equity issues in Minnesota for decades. He's now with the Children's Minnesota Health System.
Witnesses say it was an all-out melee.
In 2013, he was working for Minneapolis Public Schools when a brawl erupted at a local high school.
Some students had escalated a food fight into a physical altercation. There were a large number of African students, mostly Somali students, and a large number of African American students who seemed to be on opposite sides of the fight or altercation. And at that time, we realized that we probably need to do something differently.
Burrows had frequent and public meetings with Somali leaders and community members.
We talked about how we needed to work together and learn from each other about that misinformation we got as kids, and basically learn about each other, our cultures, our business acumen, our educational acumen, and move forward together. And our kids, our young people, needed to see that as well.
With time, Ibrahim Hirsi says youth whose parents came from Africa began to forge their own identity.
Young people are saying, you know, maybe we are Africans, right? We come from these different spaces, but at the end of the day, There are no differences between us and African Americans.
When people of color, and especially Black people, face the police, it doesn't matter what country you may have come from. They're not checking for your last name. They're not checking for your accent. They just see black skin.
So when Minneapolis police killed George Floyd in May of 2020,
You saw folks with hijabs on in the march. You saw folks that were Liberian in the George Floyd March. You saw folks from Kenya in the George Floyd March. You saw lots of white people in the George Floyd March. So it brought people together to say, I don't want this happening to me or occurring in the future.
teacher Korsha Hassan went to the protests too. And Floyd's killing had an impact on her mother, who was raised in Somalia and paid relatively little attention to issues of race.
My mom watched the video and was just in tears, primarily because of how George Floyd was calling out to his mother. That really tugged at her heartstrings. And it was just a moment of realizing that students, kids, children are ready for these conversations, and they need places and spaces to unpack them. And if we disregard their feelings and how they're processing information, we are doing them a huge disservice.
Hassan won the Minnesota Teacher of the Year award in 2020.
Receiving that title validated who I was and how I connect with students, with all students, not just Somali students or Black or Brown, and how I uplift and affirm their voices.
And those voices are now being amplified at the state capitol by people like Esther Agbaje.
Saying that, there's only one piece of the pie that we're allowed as Black people, and so then we have to fight amongst ourselves with that piece. And it's like, no, there's a whole pie. We all can get a slice. We all deserve that slice.
Agbaje has joined other African immigrants and African Americans in the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, now more than 20 members strong. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Fred DeSam Lazaro in the Twin Cities.
And Fred's reporting is in partnership with the Undertold Stories Project at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota.